Okay, I think looks like people are joining. So hello everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar. And my name is Connor Clark and I work for the SCA. Today we'll be meeting the Competitions Strategic Committee, or the CSC for short. We'll be hearing about its work, including getting insight into its vision, strategic goals, timelines, and upcoming initiatives. So thank you for joining today. Joining us on behalf of the CSC, we have Bart Dupre, CSC Chair. We've got Amy Ball, SCA Events Officer, and Sariam Puri, CSC Committee Member. Before I turn you over to Bart, we'll have time for Q&A afterwards, so please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. Okay, Bart, you want to take it away?
Yeah, hello everybody. I have to say good evening. I'm here in Belgium, but I think two other people have to say good morning, good evening, good night. So everybody welcome. As you know, the WCE or the WCC has a lot of competitions, and we hear that a lot of people are sometimes asking, who are the people behind the scenes who are working on the competitions, changing and do all the evolutions that we had for the past years and the years coming up? Well, I think it's time to meet them. And can I ask you the next slide? So we have some images of a fine group of people who is working with us. So it's about 20 people. We have 15 volunteers and about 5 staff members who are working behind the scenes during the competitions and after the competitions and before the competitions. A lot of people are volunteering, and this is a group that started working together after the pandemic. It's not the first group, because we started in about 2011, 2017 with a new group, and all volunteers, and they're all focused on their own, meaning some of them are competitors, some of them are judges, some of them are working behind the scenes as stage managers. So it's a group of volunteers that is working a lot. We do meet a lot during the evenings and in our spare time. But what do we do? What is the, and can I have the next slide, please? So with all the experience, we have to look for the new vision and the purpose of the World Coffee Championships, because they are evolving. It's not the same anymore as the competitions that started about 20 years ago. Now, every year they are changing, and it's the purpose and the goal of this group of people to maintain that the competitions are evolving, that we looking and we are listening to people all over the world, competitors, judges, reps, sponsors, all the people that are involved. We call them stakeholders because we have a lot of stakeholders, and we are looking for them, listening to them, and changing if necessary, evolving, that's called. So we get a lot of feedback from them, especially from at the world level, because everybody is focused on the World Championships. But don't forget, we have a lot of national championships, the competition bodies, we call them. So we get a lot of information from them too, and we give them also a lot of information. But so we have to change, we have to evolve, and to do that, so for the last 5 years, so we started in 2017, I guess, with a new plan, with a group of volunteers, and revisiting the vision and the purpose of the WCE. So we had a couple of meetings, and we worked behind the scenes a lot of times to see if we are still on track with what the community and all the stakeholders were asking and from the competitions. Stakeholders, we have competitors, we have roasters, we have producers, we have the judges, we have people watching at home, a barista, a young barista who gets inspired from us. All those, we have to give them something. So in 2017, it was time for us to revision everything ask a lot of questions, and we did that. And we wrote a new vision and the purpose. So, Connor, can you give me the next slide? So our vision for the next 5 years and the next years will be that the WCE need to inspire the coffee community, and not only the community, but all the coffee professions along the value chain. How will we do that? Well, through compelling championships and support of that. Support, giving information and reading the feedback that we get, because we do get a lot of feedback after the competitions or events, and we need to read it, listen to it, and changing, and that needs to be the vision. It needs to be a sustainable network with the competition bodies. We do know we have big competition bodies, we have smaller competition bodies, so it's our vision that we need to help them in organizing competitions, helping them with providing judges, the reps, and also the volunteers. And the WCE competitions recognize professional excellence, work towards accessibility for all, and highlight it is a team effort that takes to create and serve specialty coffee. So it's not only one person that we need to put in the picture, in the spotlight, but the whole team that is behind it. Because I think a lot of people know that it's not only one competitor, one barista champion that is on the scene who is doing everything. No, there is a whole group of people behind it. So we need to focus them, and we need to put them in the highlights. And what's the purpose? And that's the next slide, Connor. So the purpose of the WCE, the WCC, is to celebrate the craft of coffee by inspiring, engaging, and fostering communities worldwide. We don't create champions. We give a platform, and they create themselves. We never say that. And we provide a platform also for recognition, innovation, and growth through events that are accessible for everybody and relevant for everyone along the supply chain and at every skill level. So it's not only for the top 6 finalists who we are making, no, it's also for the, as I said before, the barista who is starting in this wonderful world of coffee, who is looking at YouTube at some people who became world champion. Well, to get their inspiration, we need to show them also and inspire them. That's the purpose of the WCE. Just before we go to Amy, who will explain the objectives that we created in the work we did, just a little timeline. So in 2017, this group was established. So we worked a lot on the vision and the purpose. We wrote it down. We reevaluated it after, of course, of COVID, but in big purpose, they stay the same. In 2018, the Rules and Regulations Working Group was formed to create a 5-year vision for competitions. So we will have a lot of changes coming on, and Serian will talk to you about that later. But some of them were already on the agenda just before and just after COVID. But of course, everybody understands it's a work of a lot of volunteers, and all those people had to work on their own businesses, and it was difficult to meet each other. Then in 2019, also before, so we finalized some tactical plans and the purpose and the goals that we had to attain. Amy will talk to you about them and a little bit later. So, but then, yeah, COVID came. It was very difficult for us to continue. And in 2022, we created this wonderful new group of people. And I have to say, we are really motivated to continue. And to show you that the SCA and the WCE did a lot of work, and we are all motivated to continue. So Amy, please take over.
Yeah, thanks, Bart. So yeah, Bart did a great job. So essentially this new CSC group, we had just been about to release our new 5-year tactical plans for evolving the competitions right before the pandemic hit. So the pandemic obviously changed a lot, and we tried to stay static during the pandemic and make sure things were smooth. And we brought this new group back. And we've been reviewing those plans and making edits to them because the world is a little bit different now. But we are about to drop on December 22nd. Sarianne will talk about it, some rules changes. What I'm going to go over now, so Bart went over the vision and purpose that we had created for this group in 2017. I'm going to go over the strategic objectives. There are 4 main strategic objectives that are applicable to the WBC, or to the, not WBC, to the World Coffee Championships evolution. There's 2 additional strategic objectives that I'm not going to go over. Those are more internal, about maintaining staffing and making sure that we can support these strategic objectives. We did review the 4 strategic objectives with the new group to make sure that they were still consistent with our goals and how we wanted to evolve the competitions. The new group did determine that they thought that the 4 strategic objectives were still relevant, and that they wanted to keep those as our framework. So any change that we make or propose to make will be supported by a strategic objective. So a lot of times when a tactic comes up, we will think about it and we will make sure that it is relevant to a strategic objective that we have stated. So I'm going to show the strategic objectives to you now, and you'll see that there is the main objective and there's a bunch of sort of sub goals below it. The sub goals these are from 2017, and so they may change a little bit still, but the main strategic objectives are still the same. So I wanted to provide that context before we start. So yeah, we can go to strategic objective 1. So the group decided that we needed to evaluate competition formats for effectiveness and to make efficient use of resources. So they wanted to create format objectives for each individual competition, right? So not just a blanket for all of them. So part of our goals were to review these strategic objectives and discuss end goals for each 2022 championship. The dates have changed on this because our timeline has expanded because of the pandemic. So just note that. Our goal is to create a 5-year strategy for each competition, layering in rules and regulation changes for each year until the goal is met. So we would envision what the competition was supposed to look like 5 years from then, and then we would go back and build the stair steps if that change was a big change. So sometimes if it was a small change, we could do it in 1 year or 2 years, but if it was a very big change, we would think through how the change needs to be layered in over 5 years to get to the end goal. We would submit strategy for approval and then begin creating those smaller tactical rules and regulations changes. Next slide. Our strategic objective number 2 is that the competition experience, so all of it, is more engaging, more celebratory, and exemplifies a competitor-first spirit. So some of the things that we were looking at in terms of places to focus on that would support the strategic objective are evolving the rules and regulations so they foster celebratory, positive, competitor-first ethos at events, amplify celebration of competitors, judges, and community surrounding competitions beyond one winner. There was one example of this that did already happen before the pandemic, which is the inclusion of the producer in the posted rankings on the website. So that is one tactic that was specific to celebrating more individuals in the systems map. Engage the consumer audience, leverage competitions for content, better amplification of competitions, and create ambassadorship of top competitors, foster leadership, and benefit competition bodies. So those are some of the things we think about when we think about what tactics to include. All right, strategic objective 3. Strategic objective 3 was that internal support systems are in place to facilitate growing and healthy competition bodies and national championships. Some of our goals were to restructure and redefine competition body management, to grow the WC representative pool, to establish a SCA and competition body communication plan, and to grow competition body community capacity. Some of the changes that we were able to make before pandemic were the establishment of regional community directors. So those, we call them RCDs internally because we use a lot of acronyms. So the RCDs is an SCA role that supports different competition bodies. So there's a different staff management process for the competition bodies. We will have someone overseeing the representative pool in 2023 and looking at those training programs. We will be talking a lot in 2023 about increased communication to WC representatives, competition bodies. There are going to be a fair amount of changes coming up, so we do acknowledge that we have a lot of obligation to get everyone up to speed about them, to train people, to train our reps, to train our judges, and to look at our judge certification program and how we do that and how we include more people in that. And then grow competition body community and capacity. You will see that we have already, also pre-pandemic to this point, we have started to kind of make some distinctions between world competition rules and CB rules. That is intentional. That is because we know that sometimes making things more, well, we know sometimes that making our rules more variable at the world level can be problematic at CB level. And so sometimes you'll see that we make a change at world level, but we ask the CBs not to do that. For example, the variable station layouts. We understand that that's a logistics burden. We know that competition bodies are often run by community groups who are volunteer led, and we want to continue to make changes at the world level, and then also keep it consistent and a little bit simplified at the competition body level so that we're not asking competition bodies to also make some of these changes. Okay, fourth one. Okay, strategic objective number 4. Equality, diversity, inclusion are embraced. Accessibility and inclusivity are embedded in the competition community's way of working. This is an important strategic objective, and one that brings up lots of different ways to do this when you come from different perspectives and different stakeholder groups. So we wanted to explore platforms for translation and multilingual access to core materials, increase participation of underrepresented groups in competitions, and event staff and lead volunteers complete bias training. These are some of the things we looked at in 2017. We're also looking at additional tactics and ways to do this in moving forward. And this is really there's really a lot of interesting conversation that happens here about if we do this, will it actually produce results in these various areas? And there's a lot of cool research too that SE is doing that kind of impacts this conversation differently. So stand by on that, but that is our strategic objective. Those are our 4 strategic objectives and things that sort of underwrite any of the rules changes you will see. They all should relate to getting one of these things done. And before I turn it over to Sarah-Ann to take us through the next section, I do want to say that if you are having questions, or if you have questions, if you're starting to have questions, please type them in the Q&A tab, and we can address those at the end. All right, and I'll turn it over to Sarah-Ann.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, let's just jump into the upcoming initiatives and the rules and regulations. So of course, Athens is not far away, and we're going to be dropping some big changes. And I'm going to have to leave you hanging a little bit on like a cliffhanger because I cannot give exact details today, but the drop will be really soon, just in a couple of days, December 22nd. But generally speaking, what we are looking at changing is what is allowed in the performance, where can we open up the competition for people to do new things. We're also looking at how we score and how we evaluate performance, keeping in mind, of course, the objectives that Amy presented and also what Bart said about what is important in the competition and how we can better evaluate that and give more clarity to what we're looking for in a competitor and in a champion. The changes that you'll be seeing have been a long time coming for a large part. There will also be changes that are a little bit more new. For example, we're looking at scoring, weighting, and evaluation changes that are also partially rooted in new and emerging knowledge in sensory analysis. So some of you might have heard that there's a new cupping form that's going to be dropped soon that the SCA is working on. And that will influence, of course, how coffee is assessed. And that is something that we are also looking at when we're looking at tasting coffees in competitions. So from the SCA research department, that team has been working with us and working on the new coffee value assessment system that we will be integrating partially into the judging. So that's very exciting. I know that's very vague, and my apologies for that, but know that big things are coming, and I would definitely keep my eye open on December 22nd. I think it will be good changes. We really feel that this is the way we want to go, and as I said, there could be bigger changes made, but I think we'll need to wait with that a little bit. But nonetheless, the changes that we'll see will have a big impact already. Because these changes are quite big, specifically after a few years where we've been more reserved with making changes. Of course, COVID, there was already so much going on, both for competitors, for judges, for people just trying to run a business. We thought it would be better to just press pause a little bit and allow people to deal with the pandemic and navigate. Do you shake hands? Where do you stand? Do we wear masks? There was already so much to consider that we thought, let's just press pause. And although COVID is not 100% behind us, we do feel the time is right to hit the ground running and start making changes. Because these are quite big changes, we will be providing supportive webinars and really try to highlight the concepts and the differences. And these will be in the new year. And they will provide the context that you need and really help you understand the changes that we made. Yeah, I really encourage you to join them. I know it's one thing to read the rules and regulations and the changes online, but sometimes it's easier to ask questions if you have them in these webinars or just hear the context behind a rule change. So you can sign up for that. And if you have any questions, even if you cannot attend the webinar, you can always email info@worldcoffeeevents.org with those questions. Having been said that, we do have a survey coming up because, as I said, some changes are happening this next season. However, some changes are not yet happening. That is also because, as you can imagine, these objectives are quite large, and how to achieve these objectives can be hard as well. Like changing one thing could benefit one objective, but negatively impact another objective, or something we think of might be really good for one thing, but not as good for another thing. So we really want to see for some changes if that makes sense, and what people think and what your input is, and then specifically strategic goals number 2 and number 4. So that's the celebration and engagement of the competition and the inclusion and diversity of the competition. We would really love to get more feedback and your ideas of what would be good for this competition and what would benefit everybody. So there's, for example, we're looking at innovation, how we support that more in the future while still being accessible. And also looking at compulsory coffee, which is something you always hear going around every conversation. Should we have a compulsory coffee for barista championships? Yes or no? It's controversial, and we would really like to know what people's opinions are, if they think it's good, it's bad, how it would work. Any ideas are welcome. So that will be coming up in January, and it would be great to have your feedback and input, so we can use that as well to really guide our decisions. It's a big group with different backgrounds, but we are surely not representing everybody in the industry and in the competition. So it would be great to hear from you. And then questions.
I'm going to jump in because we just got a question. It says, I wonder how we could make championships more accessible for baristas and judges from producing countries. I often feel a disconnection and that it's hard for us to keep up with. Like, for example, world championships and judge certifications usually take place in places that are not really accessible for everyone for various reasons. Yes, I am with you. This is definitely an issue. So I think changing the rules is one thing, but then also looking at who's sitting in the seats, in the judging seats, is also really important to consider when you're looking at creating accessibility and how do we get more diversity and variation there. And it's a super important question. It's actually, there's a lot of layers there, but I will say that we have been looking at our judge certification both from a content perspective, and that's still a little bit shifting because as we're shifting the rules and as we're learning more about how we value coffee from research and our coffee value assessment team, we're also acknowledging that we may need to be testing for different things, right? So in 2023, you'll hear a lot about the different types of coffee assessment. You'll hear a lot about descriptive analysis. You'll hear about hedonic analysis and how they're different and what it takes to do those different types of evaluation. And then do we need to look at different types of judges consequently? So we're doing a lot of that work in terms of what are the qualifications for a judge? And so the judge certification itself will change. The other component of that is how we deliver the judge certification, which is what this question sort of points to, is like, they're always, you know, they happen a few times a year, they happen in a specific place that people have to go to. And so we've gotten some collaboration with the education team to talk through how do we actually get more stuff online, and how do we deliver content differently? How do we deliver more learning content so we can get to different geographic places? We'll always need to do some type of in-person certification that includes, you know, evaluating the capacity for an individual to like complete the score sheet in time and go through protocol. But we are looking at different mechanisms to actually get more content out to different places. And then trying to figure out how I want to say this. I am very invested in the idea that we need different stakeholder groups in those seats. I guess that's what I'll say. So there are various ways to do that. And there are some really big ways that we've talked about changing that, but nothing is gonna, those are sort of more longer term changes, but I do think it's really important to get a variety of people evaluating performances. I think that's what I'll say. So yes, this is totally top of mind, and we actually have a new group of people working on it, which includes some people from the education team, and look more for specifics on that in 2023, and then for changes in terms of like, yeah, look for more of that in 2023, and feel free to just continue to send us questions and ideas.
And I think we got another question from a member of the SCA Switzerland, who is asking if there is like a digital platform to get more information, to organize competitions, score sheets, timetables. It's a long question, but it consumes a little bit like that. It's also something on the agenda that we as a WCE wants to create, like a guide, a script to organize competitions. That is on the agenda. I don't think it will be ready for 2023, but it should be 2024, 2025. that we are doing scripts. So if you want to organize a competition, whatever competition it is, things like when should I start organizing, thinking about organizing, when should I start inviting judges, what do I need to organize a barista competition, a latte art competition, cupping. So it's one of the objectives that we need to do, and to help the competition bodies in every country or in every region to organize that. So we know that a lot of people are asking that, so we are working on it. Yes.
Yeah, and to Bart's point, we do have CB tools available online. I think and they obviously need to go through revision, and there's a team that does that. There's also, in that question, I'm seeing that there's a platform to allow other countries to share their tools and documentation. That's super interesting, and that's something that I think we should roll up to the CXP team to see how they can solve that, because that there are CBs that do things very differently, competition bodies, sorry, CBs and chapters who do things really differently, and they often come up with innovative tools that that then we are inspired by. So we don't always generate the best ideas. There are lots of there's 65 sanctioned competition bodies, and many of them have very smart, capable people who come up with great tools. So that, I think, is a good suggestion. Okay. Oh, is one of your objectives to make the coffee competitions more advertised, more renowned, more famous outside of the specialty coffee community? Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, and we've talked about which ones and how we do that. That's definitely it's definitely on our minds. I feel like we talked about it more in 2018, when we felt like we were really clear on what our plans were going to be. Like in 2018, 2019, we felt really clear on what the plan should be. Post-pandemic, we've actually spent a lot more time thinking about modulating those tactics and incorporating this new coffee value assessment, because all this research has happened in the last few years. So we definitely need to think about how we leverage our competitions, and I feel like we need to allow them a little bit of time to evolve. Not that we can't do this in tandem, but if there are specific ideas that are baked into this question, I do think that we are happy to listen to them. I definitely have some thoughts about coffee and good spirits. So if there are thoughts and ideas of how to mobilize on this tactic, please feel free to reach out to us. We also are making some changes to the CSC in 2023. So there are some people stepping down, and there are some people that are incoming. I do think, especially when we get down to tactical groups, which I'm not sure about the timing of that, we do have room for additional inclusions. So if you are passionate enough to feel like you want to spend some time with us, we're a fun group, but we do meet a lot. So that's just something to know.
If you have other questions, please let us know.
I am seeing one more question, but I don't totally understand the question. So I'm going to read it. And if the person who is asking this question can maybe reframe it. because I'm not seeing how it's relevant to the CSC and the World Coffee Championships evolution, but it absolutely could be. The question is, I want to highlight the contribution of community coffee groups. Is there any way we can get involved? When you say, I want to highlight the contribution of community coffee groups, that's the part that I'm not quite clear on what is the objective there. And I want to answer it. I'm just not quite sure. The second question, is there any way we can get involved? If you're talking about the CSC or rules and regulations or the evolution of competitions, yes, absolutely. You can definitely send us your ideas. We would love for you to participate in the survey that's going to drop in January. That survey is specifically going to be about a lot of changes that we have internally discussed and there is not consensus about. So you can see we do have broad objectives, right? We have objectives. And so say take accessibility, for example. There's a lot of people who think about accessibility in different ways. So there have been a few things suggested that don't have consensus on the group, where there are passionate people who say, yes, this is a change that needs to happen. And there are passionate people who say, no, we agree with the strategic objective, but this isn't the way to get there. So there's a couple of things that we want to send out to our community to say, recognizing that we're not going to reach consensus. Do you think this goal is like important? How do you feel about this goal? And can we just get your feedback on this tactic, not the goal, I'm sorry, the tactic. And so we are going to try to get some community feedback for changes that are that we ourselves don't have total agreement on, to kind of help us tilt it one way or the other, or maybe someone will have a good idea for, it's not even this, here's another way you can do it, and maybe there's something we haven't thought of. So the survey would be great to do. If you have questions about our changes, you can write to info@. If you want to just suggest ideas, Connor, is that still info@?
It is. You can also drop. I dropped a link there to if you want to learn more about the CSC, and there's also a contact form there, so you can submit feedback if you want a follow-up or just anonymous feedback, either if you'd prefer to do it that way.
Great. So I think I've answered that question, but the first part of the question actually makes me wonder if I missed a part of it that this person actually wants answered. So if there is another follow-up question, feel free to type it. I'm seeing, are there changes planned to the objections process? I'm assuming this means the appeal process. No, we have not changed the appeal process for 2023. But if there is something specific that that this individual would like us to look at, please feel free to email info@. But yeah, that hasn't been touched, no.
Wow, we have some great news. I'm just reading a comment of somebody. So just checking that I read correct. Well, there is somebody who wants to say hello, and they are very excited to be part of this. And so welcome in the group, and next year they will be present. So I'm so happy, and welcome in the community of coffee.
Sorry, we've got rogue comments in the chat box. There are certain questions coming in that we really would like to answer and really would like to shout out, but we do have to wait until December 22nd. So we are keeping each other in check in the background. and there's some ideas coming in as well. Yes. Yeah, I would say if you're posting ideas in this chat box, it's a great place to get 3 people who are on the CSC visibility to it. I would still email info at. So like one of the things that I'm seeing, which is a great idea, is around a digital score sheet and just like a faster workflow. We did actually, interestingly enough, we did actually go down the road of a digital score sheet in 2019. We were talking to a company, and the real issue that we got to was around how much changes happen year to year, and so the infrastructure of actually changing it year to year, especially when we knew some of the big changes that were coming, we thought, okay, well, we need to hold on this until we get to a place where it's a little more stable. But yes, the idea that judges could have iPads and that you could just input your information and it would be digital and uploaded is so great. If you know, we actually sort of exploded the minds of the computer programmers a little bit, because this particular company we were talking to specialized in digital score sheets, but they hadn't seen a score sheet like ours, and it was it was definitely a windy conversation. I would love to entertain that idea. I think that would be amazing. It would definitely take a lot of lift off the current process for sure. So if anyone knows any computer programmers who are who have software like this, and it is, I think the software was the limiting factor too, because it wasn't particularly modular. We couldn't go in on the back end and just train somebody to make those edits. That's probably not going to be the first thing we tackle. Honestly, we're getting through some different changes right now, but yeah, that's something that would be great. And if there was a company that actually had software that made sense for us right away, that'd be amazing. So if you know them, please let us know.
Yeah, and then there's a
one for you,
question.
Sherry-Ann.
Yeah, I read it. So to repeat the question is, how could competitors and judges be more on the same page about understanding of the rules, taste evaluation, and performance evaluation? So this is a subject that is hard, right? Because it's said, it's all in the rules, you can read it back, but there's always room for interpretation. So a large part of what the CSC does, and also when we're looking at changes in the rules and regulation, is seeing how can we clarify it more? How can we be more clear on what we're really, really looking for? And some of the changes that we did prior to Milan, I want to say, we're already quite clarifying in what are we actually looking for. There will be changes this time around as well, trying to clarify and pull apart some of the evaluation aspects. So I'm really, really hoping that will make it easier. I really think it will, but I'm sure we haven't captured all the clarifications. The question is if that is possible. I do really, really recommend joining the webinar on the rules and regulation changes, because if there's something that you think is not clear, then you can always also ask clarification questions. And again, that can also be afterwards. So you can always email and ask, hey, this rule, I don't get it. I don't really understand. What does that mean? Or if you're not sure if something that you're planning in your presentation and you're not sure if it's allowed, you're always allowed to ask, is that okay? And if we can answer it, we will always answer it. So that is one thing. And the second thing I would say is, if you feel that there is something in the rule that is contradictory or unclear, that's always also feedback that we would love to have. So also just send an email again or fill in the form on the website stating the rule, say why it's unclear, and we will read it and listen to that. And a large part of what we do is, again, the CSC group is quite large. There's also a lot of judges. There's also people who have competed in the past or have worked with competitors in the past who know where these pain points are. And we have these discussions of, well, this is what the judge is looking for, and the competitor past competitor be saying, oh, that's maybe not very clear. So those are points that we then pick up and try to implement in the new rules and regulations and provide clarity. So working on it, but it will always be a dialogue.
As it should be, and it always should be, yeah. Just adding to that, Serian, as you mentioned before, we will, the WCE will organize trainings and webinars to understand the current rules and the new rules that are coming up, because we will have big changes. So keep in touch with us, keep in touch with the social media and our websites, informations, because we will organize new webinars and trainings for judges, for competitors, or just people who wants to know and get involved into knowing the rules and the competitions.
What is the deadline to send feedback for rules and regulations before it will be announced at Athens? Rules and regulations for Athens are dropping on December 22nd. So we have an obligation to get rules and regulations changes 6 months, posted 6 months prior to the world competition. So if you're looking to impact rules and regulations changes for the world competitions in Athens, there is no time to do that. We've been busy editing, and that's the work that we have done from for the new CSC. So yeah, the CSC for this year started their work in June, the new group. So it has been an absolute whirlwind of meetings from June to now. So there's no time to impact Athens. With respect to future, there's time. So our deadline for publishing the new rules is always 6 months prior to the world competitions, which means that we have to start talking about what those changes are going to be well in advance of that. So we also, once we publish new rules and regulations, then have to change the World Competitions Educational Program, all the training materials that Judge uses to calibrate the national events. All of it changes in a lot of places. So actually, the lead up time to make changes is more than just the lead up time to actually even write the rules. And then we have to sort of vet changes against a variety of things. So like a change may feel really, really good, and we think, yeah, like logistics wise, we can do that this year. But then we will think about maybe local regulations, or like a contract that's already been signed, or a limitation of, oh, but we only have, 3 station layouts and it's already submitted to the builder. There's like so many different considerations for a change. So usually the trajectory of actually being able to make that change in a meaningful way is a little bit longer. I hope that gives a little bit of a sense of what that complexity is and what that timeline is. But yeah, if you're looking at, my suggestion is that instead of looking at sort of micro change benchmarks, think about what do you want the competition to ultimately do and look like? Think about the big change. Think about, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And even if it feels really far away from where we're currently at, that's really what we do, is we look at like, what do we want it ultimately to look like? And then we track backwards and think like, what are the little benchmark changes we need to make in order to reach that goal? So that's, yeah, if you're going to send feedback, we'll definitely take the micro things like, hey, this word doesn't make sense, like this word doesn't translate. There's definitely small changes like that are important and valuable, but also when you're thinking about what changes would you like to see, like it's also, it can be helpful to think about like, well, what's the end goal? I can take this next question too about disqualification if you want. Would it be possible to remove all disqualification in the rule to replace points penalty and replace by points penalty in order to not punish too strongly the competitors? Anything is possible. I don't think that's something, I do think that there's a threshold beyond which like the points penalty would be too great. Like for example, when you DQ after, so we'll just take WBC for an example, although it's not the only one. When you DQ after, I think it's what, 18 minutes of presentation, or there's a certain amount of time that beyond which you can't go. That is because we have a real logistics consideration that we can't let someone go for 30 minutes. And also the points penalty would be in the negatives. So there are cases in places where actually DQ does make more sense than saying, sure, you can go on as long as you want and you just get points deduction. It's a simple example, but I don't see a future where disqualification is going away, I suppose. But if the idea is to, because one of our and everything needs to be tied to a strategic goal, right? So I could see this idea maybe being tied to a more celebratory competitor first ethos. So like, does your question, could it translate into, let's take a look at penalties and do they support that strategic objective of having it be more celebratory? That's a relevant question. I would send that into info at.
Another question, will webinars, online training sessions for rules be part of the competition process each year, or only when changes are made? I think that's a good idea to continue, not only doing it when big changes are coming. But yeah, thank you for the tip. I think we will put it on the agenda that we can organize online trainings that are available for everybody who wants at what time they wants to see it and or read it. So yeah, sure, it should be and it will be.
Yeah, so I understand there's also a question about compulsory round in Barista. I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but I know it's one of the questions. We can neither confirm or deny where we're going with this, but as I said, we have the survey and compulsory coffee is definitely mentioned on the survey. There's a lot to say for compulsory rounds, and there's also a lot of reasons to be against compulsory rounds. Mm-hmm. And it would be really, really, really beneficial to get people's feedback and ideas in the survey.
You have hit on a hotly contested item, my friend, whoever put this in. So I guess without confirming any of the changes that are definitely going to be dropped in December 22, what I can say is that is not one of them, but that is one of the ideas that was suggested that created quite a rift and quite a lot of healthy conversation about does it or doesn't it in actuality remove bias or create accessibility. And there's it's a lot more complicated than at least I thought at first glance. So ding, ding, ding. This will be part of the survey, and this is definitely one of the areas for WBC that has been proposed. And there are a couple different camps of how to look at it. This is probably a good place to mention that part of my function as a staff member on the CSC is to encourage the discussion from both sides, to try to support with research, additional expertise, so to bring in info from other places, and then to help us get to a place where we can make a decision, acknowledging that sometimes, especially when you've got a lot of disparity of opinion, there is no right decision, right? So, but that every decision needs to be rooted in a strategic goal. So my objective is to get us to a place where the committee understands that, where we get to a decision. For this one in particular, we thought, okay, we're going to need additional feedback from the community to think about it. And then at some point we'll make a decision. No matter what decision we make on this, I can guarantee you there's going to be people who are like very pro whatever that decision is and people who are very con whatever that decision is. But our goal is not to stay static. Our goal is to try things and then see if it actually pushes the needle in our strategic goals. So you may see things that we try, and they're rooted in these ideas, that they're rooted in, okay, here, our strategic goal is to do this. We've had all this conversation about it. Here's where the I guess the majority is leading, so let's try it. And if it doesn't actually push the needle in the direction that we think it is, we are like going to, change it. And so part of why we wanted to do this webinar is to create some visibility to the fact that there are a group of volunteers and people working on this. There are a group of staff trying to like encourage and filter and move things forward. And we are going to make change that's rooted in our strategic goals. We may do things that we eventually say like, we're going to try stuff is what I want to say. But it's not going to be trying things for just trying things. It is trying things because we are listening and because we are learning. And we really want to make the competition better and not lose sight of the fact that it is our competition platforms are massive platforms for our community, for all of the people on the supply chain, for innovation, for they're really important platforms. So we don't want to make arbitrary changes. We don't want to make changes that are just for the sake of change. We want to make sure that they're rooted in change. We also know that we are going to make changes that even internally, we don't necessarily have consensus on. And so my job is to sort of midwife that, I suppose, midwife those conversations. And it's really fun. It's really great. It feels so good when you hit a sweet spot where everybody just has consensus. We've had some of those for some of the big changes, and everyone's like, yes, we got to do that. That's definitely part of our strategic goal. And then there's these other issues where there's just various opinions, and it's cool. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if we have time for any other questions. I feel like we do need to wrap this. I'm not seeing any more that have been pasted into. Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
Connor.
I think we're pretty much at time, so I think we'll just wrap things up. I did note some questions that are more feedback, so we'll definitely take those into consideration in our planning. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed the chance to just meet the group and hear more about the process and what we've been up to. And yeah, hope you all look forward to the rules dropping next week. Thanks so much, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.